At my husband's birthday dinner, his mom joked he could always do better. I told her he said the same about his parents. The table went quiet. My father-in-law set down his fork with deliberate slowness. My husband, Brandon, looked like he'd swallowed glass. But his mother? She smiled. That terrifying smile women perfect when they've decided you're the enemy. Interesting, she said, voice dripping with false sweetness. Brandon, have you been sharing family business with your little wife? For 3 years, I'd endured her comments. How I was too thin, then too heavy after the baby. How my degree was cute but not practical. Brandon always said she meant well, that I was too sensitive. When we got home, Brandon exploded. Do you have any idea what you've done? She already thinks you're not good enough. The truth landed like a slap. Not she's wrong. Just confirmation that yes, his mother thought I was beneath them, and Brandon had done nothing to defend me. I spent the next week preparing for consequences. They arrived in the form of a family text thread Brandon left open on his laptop. His mother was planning an intervention. She'd contacted a lawyer. There were mentions of our daughter, Violet, and concerns about her welfare. My hands shook as I scrolled through messages about my parenting, my supposed instability. That's when I found his mother's journal during a visit to their house. Inside were pages of notes spanning years. Every mistake I'd made, every argument, dates, times, witnesses. She'd been building a case against me since our engagement. The final entry made my blood run cold. Once we establish her as unfit, Brandon can finally move on. I photographed every page. At home, I dug deeper into our finances. Brandon had opened a separate account 3 months ago. His mother was the co-signer. He'd transferred $34,000, money we'd saved for Violet's education. Receipts showed payments to the lawyer his mother had mentioned. When I confronted Brandon, he didn't deny it. Mom just wants what's best for Violet. You've become so paranoid. He actually used the word paranoid, straight from his mother's playbook. I realized this wasn't spontaneous. They'd been planning to take my daughter for months. I called every lawyer in town. Most had conflicts of interest, his mother's connections running deep. The fourth lawyer, Patricia, agreed to see me immediately. I know that family, she said darkly. You're not the first wife who sat in this chair. She helped me secure emergency orders and file for divorce first. That night, I packed what mattered and took Violet to my sister's house 2 hours away. Brandon showed up at dawn with his parents and 2 police officers. But Patricia had prepared me well. I had documentation of everything. The officers took one look at my evidence and told Brandon's family to leave. His mother's face transformed into something ugly. You think you've won? We have connections. I'll see you lose everything. 3 days later, his mother's lawyer sent papers claiming I'd abandoned my home and demonstrated unstable behavior. They had affidavits from family friends swearing I'd been erratic, depressed, negligent. All lies, but documented lies from respectable people. That evening, I found a social worker at my sister's door. Someone had reported concerns about Violet's welfare. As she examined my temporary home and interviewed me while Violet played in the next room, I realized how perfectly they'd laid their trap. Every move I'd made to protect my daughter could be twisted to look like parental kidnapping. The social worker closed her notebook. I need you to come with me to the office. We have some concerns we need to address. Immediately. The social worker's name was Geneva, and she had kind eyes that didn't match the severity of her words. I looked at Violet, who was building a tower with blocks on my sister's living room floor, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire world was about to shatter. Can I at least call my lawyer? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Geneva hesitated, then nodded. You have 5 minutes. I dialed Patricia with shaking hands. She answered on the first ring. They sent CPS, I said. They're taking me in for questioning. Don't say anything without me present. Nothing. I'm leaving now. Patricia's voice was sharp, focused. Where's Violet? Here with me. They're going to try to separate you. Don't let them take her anywhere without a court order. Make them show you paperwork. Geneva was watching me carefully when I hung up. My lawyer is on her way, I said. She advised me not to answer questions without her present. That's your right, Geneva said, though her expression tightened. But I still need you to come with me. Your daughter can stay here with your sister while we sort this out. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. Show me the court order that says you can remove her from my care. Geneva's lips pressed into a thin line. Ma'am, I'm trying to make this easier for everyone. Show me the paperwork. My sister, Caroline, stepped forward. She was 5 years older than me and had always been the steady one. I'm happy to have Violet stay here while you sort this out. She knows me. She's comfortable. I wanted to argue, but Caroline caught my eye and gave me the smallest nod. She was right. Fighting Geneva in front of Violet would only make things worse. And if they were going to take my daughter, at least she'd be with family. Okay, I said quietly, but I'm coming back for her tonight. Geneva didn't respond to that. The CPS office was in a gray building downtown that smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Geneva led me to a small conference room with a table, 3 chairs, and a mirror I knew was probably one-way glass. I'd seen enough TV to recognize an interrogation setup. Someone will be with you shortly, Geneva said, then left me alone. I sat there for 38 minutes. I counted everyone. Patricia burst through the door at minute 39, her briefcase in one hand and fury in her eyes. Have they questioned you? No, they left me here. Good. She sat down across from me, pulled out a legal pad, and started writing. Tell me everything that happened today. Every detail. I walked her through the evening. The knock on the door, Geneva's careful questions about Violet's living situation, the way she'd examined my sister's apartment like she was looking for drugs or filth. Did Geneva mention who filed the complaint? Anonymous. Patricia snorted. Of course. Let me guess. They cited concerns about your mental state, the sudden move, instability. All of the above. Classic playbook. They file with CPS, claim immediate danger, try to get emergency custody before you can respond legally. If they can separate you from Violet for even a few days, they'll use that separation as evidence you're an unfit mother. Patricia's pen moved across the page rapidly. But they made a mistake. They moved too fast. We have documentation of their conspiracy, their financial manipulation. No judge is going to ignore that. The door opened. A woman in her 50s entered, followed by Geneva. The older woman introduced herself as Francine, the supervising caseworker. Mrs. Hudson, Francine began, using my married name like a weapon. We received a very concerning report today about your daughter's welfare. My client won't be answering questions about anonymous reports. Patricia cut in smoothly. But I'd be happy to provide documented evidence of a coordinated campaign to make false allegations against my client for the purpose of gaining custody of her child. Francine's eyebrows rose. That's quite an accusation. It's quite well documented. Patricia slid a folder across the table. Text messages showing premeditation. Journal entries spanning 3 years. Financial records showing embezzlement of marital funds to pay for legal fees. And affidavits from my client's neighbors, employer, and pediatrician attesting to her excellent care of her daughter. I hadn't known about the affidavits. Patricia had been busy. Francine opened the folder. Her expression remained neutral as she read, but I saw Geneva shift uncomfortably beside her. After several long minutes, Francine closed the folder. This is certainly complicated, she said carefully. But our primary concern is the child's immediate safety. Violet is safe with her mother, Patricia said. She's also safe with her maternal aunt, where she's currently staying. What she's not safe from is being used as a pawn in a bitter divorce orchestrated by a vindictive grandmother with documented obsessive behavior. We still need to complete our investigation, Francine said. Of course. My client will cooperate fully. But she's taking her daughter home tonight, and if you try to prevent that without a court order, we'll file for emergency injunctive relief and name both your agency and the individuals who filed the false report in a civil lawsuit. Francine and Geneva exchanged glances. Finally, Francine nodded. We'll continue the investigation. Mrs. Hudson, you should expect a home visit within the next few days. We'll be ready, Patricia said. As we left the building, I finally let myself breathe. Thank you, I said. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out, Patricia said. Women like you always do. But now we need to go on the offensive. No more reacting to their moves. We make them react to ours. What do you mean? I mean we stop playing defense and start filing our own motions. Fraud, conspiracy, parental alienation. We hit them with everything, and we do it publicly. Your mother-in-law's biggest weapon is her reputation. Let's see how that holds up under scrutiny. Over the next week, Patricia filed motions faster than Brandon's family could respond. Each one was carefully crafted to expose their coordination. The text messages, the journal, the embezzled funds, the false CPS report. We requested forensic accounting, depositions, discovery of all communications between Brandon, his mother, and their lawyer. The local newspaper picked up the story. Small-town drama involving a prominent family and allegations of conspiracy made for good headlines. Brandon's mother called me 6 times in one day. I didn't answer, but I did get a call from Brandon. You're destroying my family, he said. I'm protecting our daughter. Mom was just trying to help. She's worried about Violet. Your mom was documenting my life for 3 years to build a case to take my child. That's not worry, Brandon. That's obsession. You're twisting everything. She kept that journal for therapy, to process her concerns. Did her therapist recommend documenting dates and times, finding witnesses, opening secret bank accounts? Silence on the other end. You knew, I said, the realization hitting me like ice water. You knew the whole time what she was planning. I knew she had concerns, Brandon said carefully. I didn't know about the journal, but you knew about the bank account. You're the one who opened it. More silence. You were going to leave me and take Violet, I said. Your mom was just helping you build the case to make sure I couldn't fight it. Violet deserves stability. You've been so different lately, so suspicious and paranoid. Mom thought maybe you needed help. I've been different because I realized my husband and his mother were conspiring to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy so you could justify taking my daughter. My voice was remarkably calm. And the sad part? It almost worked. Brandon hung up. That night, I lay awake in my sister's guest room, listening to Violet's soft breathing from the toddler bed beside mine. Patricia had warned me the next few months would be brutal. Divorce proceedings, custody battles, CPS investigations, legal fees that would drain what little savings I had left. But I'd survived this long, and I'd keep surviving. The home visit came 3 days later. A different caseworker this time. A younger man named Felix who seemed genuinely interested in Violet's well-being rather than checking boxes. He watched her play, asked about her routine, looked at the small space Caroline had made for us. She seems happy, Felix observed. She is. She has her mom, her aunt, her toys. That's all a 3-year-old needs. The complaint alleged you'd been showing signs of mental instability, depression, erratic behavior. The complaint came from people who've been planning to take my daughter for months. I have documentation proving that. Felix nodded slowly. I read the case file, including your lawyer's submissions. He paused. For what it's worth, I don't see evidence of an unstable parent. I see a mother who protected her child from a toxic situation. Will that be in your report? Yes. Relief flooded through me, but I knew better than to celebrate too early. One positive report didn't end the war. It just won a battle. The preliminary custody hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Patricia prepared me like a soldier heading into combat. We reviewed every aspect of my relationship with Brandon, his family's behavior, the evidence we'd gathered. She drilled me on how to answer questions, how to stay calm under pressure, how to look at the judge instead of at Brandon when I spoke. They're going to paint you as unstable, vindictive, someone who tore a family apart over a perceived slight, Patricia warned. You need to be the opposite, calm, measured, a mother who did what she had to do to protect her child. What if I am vindictive? I asked. What if part of me wants them to suffer for what they tried to do? Patricia smiled grimly. Then you channel that into winning. The best revenge is keeping your daughter and watching them explain to a judge why they conspired to commit fraud. The courthouse was smaller than I expected. I'd imagined something imposing, but this was just a regular building with regular people walking through metal detectors and checking their phones. Brandon was already there with his parents and their lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Claudia, who'd made her reputation defending wealthy families. Brandon's mother looked smaller somehow, less terrifying in the harsh fluorescent light. She met my eyes across the corridor, and I saw something there I hadn't expected. Fear. She was afraid of losing. Good. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Honor Reeves. She had the weary expression of someone who'd seen every family drama possible, and had long since stopped being surprised by human behavior. Patricia had said Judge Reeves was fair, but no nonsense. She didn't tolerate games. Claudia went first, painting a picture of a concerned grandmother and worried father trying to protect a child from an increasingly unstable mother. She mentioned my sudden departure, the restraining orders, my refusal to communicate reasonably. My client simply wants what's best for his daughter, Claudia said smoothly. And right now, the child is being kept from her father and entire paternal family based on allegations that have yet to be proven in court. Then it was Patricia's turn. She didn't waste time with emotional appeals. Instead, she projected the text messages on a screen. Let the judge read Brandon's mother's own words about establishing unfitness and making sure Brandon could move on. Showed the journal entries, the financial records, the timeline of their planning versus the timeline of my supposed instability. This isn't about a child's welfare, Patricia said. This is about a controlling mother-in-law who decided her son's wife wasn't good enough and spent 3 years systematically building a false case to remove her from her grandchild's life. And when my client discovered this conspiracy and took legal steps to protect herself and her daughter, they retaliated by filing a false report with CPS. Judge Reeves studied the documents for what felt like hours. Finally, she looked up. I'm granting temporary custody to the mother, with supervised visitation for the father pending further investigation. Mr. Hudson, you'll have weekly 4-hour visits with your daughter at the community center. Mrs. Hudson, you're to have no contact with the child until the custody matter is resolved. Brandon's mother gasped. Claudia started to object, but Judge Reeves held up a hand. Counselor, your client kept a 3-year journal documenting her daughter-in-law's alleged flaws for the express purpose of building a custody case. That's not grandmotherly concern. That's premeditation. And the text messages show clear coordination to remove the mother from the child's life. Until we determine the full extent of this situation, Mrs. Hudson Sr. will have no access to the minor child. I felt Caroline squeeze my hand. Across the aisle, Brandon's mother was crying. Not the delicate tears of a sympathetic grandmother, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone whose carefully constructed plan had just collapsed. Brandon looked stunned. His father sat rigid, probably calculating the damage to their family's reputation. As we left the courthouse, Patricia pulled me aside. This is good, but it's not over. They'll appeal, file new motions, try to paint this as a misunderstanding. We need to stay sharp. How long will this take? Months, probably. Maybe longer. Custody cases are messy. I thought about months of legal battles. Months of Violet asking why she couldn't see Daddy more. Months of watching my bank account drain on lawyer fees. But then I thought about what would have happened if I hadn't found that journal. If I'd continued to believe I was the problem. I can handle months, I said. The supervised visitation started the following week. I had to bring Violet to a cheerful room in the community center, where a social worker named Iris sat quietly in the corner and took notes while Brandon played with his daughter. The first visit was awkward. Violet clung to me, confused about why Daddy couldn't come to Aunt Caroline's house. Mommy and Daddy are working some things out, I told her. But Daddy loves you very much. It physically hurt to say those words when I knew what Brandon had been planning. But Violet was 3. She didn't need to know her father had been conspiring to paint her mother as crazy. Brandon was stiff during that first visit, trying too hard. He brought too many toys, asked too many questions, kept glancing at Iris like he was being graded, which I suppose he was. By the third visit, things had settled into a rhythm. Brandon relaxed. Violet laughed more. I started arriving exactly at the start time and leaving exactly when the 4 hours were up. No small talk. No eye contact beyond what was necessary, but outside the community center one evening, Brandon caught up to me. Can we talk? Just for a minute? I glanced back at the building where Iris was helping Violet clean up toys. 1 minute. I'm sorry, Brandon said. For all of it. I didn't realize how far Mom had taken things until the lawyer showed those text messages in court. the journal. I knew she was worried, but I didn't know she was documenting everything. You knew about the bank account. She told me it was for Violet's future, that we should have money set aside that you couldn't access in case something happened. In case something happened, or in case you needed to hide marital assets during a divorce you were planning? Brandon's face reddened. I wasn't planning a divorce. Mom suggested it might be good to have options. Options. Right. I started walking toward my car. I do love Violet, Brandon called after me. I never wanted to hurt her. I turned back. You were going to let your mother paint me as an unfit parent. You were going to take my daughter and make me fight for supervised visitation while you and your mom played happy family. Don't tell me you never wanted to hurt her. You just didn't want to hurt yourself. That night, Caroline made her famous lasagna while Violet watched cartoons. My sister had been amazing through all of this, never complaining about the upheaval to her life, the toddler taking over her spare room, the constant stream of legal documents covering her kitchen table. I need to find my own place, I said. You've done enough. You'll find a place when the custody situation is settled, and you know where you'll be long-term, Caroline said firmly. Right now, you need stability for Violet. This is stability. This is your home that I've invaded. This is family helping family, which is apparently a foreign concept to the Hudsons. Caroline layered noodles with practiced efficiency. Besides, I like having you both here. The house feels less empty. Caroline had been divorced for 5 years, no kids. She'd thrown herself into her career as a hospital administrator and built a comfortable life. But I knew she was lonely sometimes. Still, I said, I need to start looking. Maybe something small, just the two of us. Have you thought about what you'll do for work? The restaurant let you take leave, but that won't last forever. I had been thinking about it. Before Violet, I'd worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm. After she was born, I'd switched to part-time freelance to be home more. Brandon had encouraged it, said his income was enough. Now I realized that had been part of the plan too. Make me financially dependent. Make me easier to paint as unstable when I had no job, no income, no stability. I have some freelance clients still. I can rebuild. While fighting a custody battle? I don't have a choice. Caroline slid the lasagna into the oven and turned to face me. You have more choices than you think. I have space. I have stability. Use it. Focus on keeping Violet and destroying Brandon's family's reputation. The rest can wait. She made it sound simple. But nothing about this situation was simple. The next court date brought new allegations. Claudia had filed a motion claiming I was preventing Brandon from developing a normal relationship with his daughter by limiting him to supervised visits. She argued that the journal and text messages were being taken out of context, that Brandon's mother was simply a concerned grandmother whose private thoughts were being weaponized. Patricia countered with depositions from 3 of Brandon's friends who confirmed he'd discussed leaving me and seeking full custody months before I discovered the journal. She also had testimony from my former neighbors who'd seen Brandon's mother driving by our old house at odd hours, sitting in her car watching. She was stalking you, Patricia said, building her case by monitoring your daily routines. The judge ordered a custody evaluation. A court-appointed psychologist would interview both of us, observe us with Violet, review the evidence, and make a recommendation. The process would take 6 weeks. Dr. Miranda Chen was a small woman with sharp eyes who missed nothing. She came to Caroline's house and watched me put Violet to bed, make her breakfast, play with her. She asked Violet questions in that careful way child psychologists have, making it seem like a game. Then she interviewed Brandon in his apartment, which I learned he'd moved into after I left. His mother had helped him furnish it. 1 bedroom for him, 1 for Violet, complete with every toy and decoration a 3-year-old could want. A shrine to potential custody. Dr. Chen also interviewed Brandon's mother, despite Judge Reeves's order keeping her away from Violet. That interview, according to Patricia who got the transcript, did not go well. She couldn't stop herself, Patricia said, almost amused. Dr. Chen asked her about her concerns about your parenting, and she went on for 45 minutes. Every small thing you'd ever done wrong, according to her. How you let Violet eat chicken nuggets. How you let her watch too much TV. How you didn't discipline her properly. I barely let her watch TV. Dr. Chen noted that. She also noted that a grandmother who catalogs that level of detail about another adult's parenting for 3 years shows signs of obsessive behavior. The custody evaluation report came back in 5 weeks. Dr. Chen recommended primary custody remain with me, with Brandon's visitation gradually increased to unsupervised as he demonstrated the ability to set boundaries with his mother. She noted that Brandon's mother showed concerning patterns of control and inability to respect parental autonomy. In other words, Brandon's mother was toxic, and everyone could see it now. The final custody hearing was scheduled for 8 months after the initial incident at the birthday dinner. 8 months of legal battles, supervised visits, and living in limbo. But when we walked into that courtroom, I felt different, stronger. I'd survived their worst, and I was still standing. Judge Reeves reviewed Dr. Chen's report, the financial documents, the testimony from multiple witnesses, and the mountain of evidence Patricia had assembled. Then she made her ruling. Primary physical custody to me. Joint legal custody with major decisions requiring both parents' agreement. Brandon's visitation to increase from supervised to unsupervised over 3 months, contingent on him completing co-parenting classes and demonstrating appropriate boundaries with his mother. His mother was prohibited from any contact with Violet for a minimum of 2 years, at which point the order could be reviewed. Brandon's mother stood up. This is outrageous. She's my granddaughter. Mrs. Hudson, Judge Reeves said coldly. You spent 3 years documenting your daughter-in-law's life with the express purpose of removing her from her child. You embezzled marital funds. You filed a false report with CPS. You stalked her home. These are not the actions of a concerned grandmother. These are the actions of someone who sees a child as property to be controlled. Until you can demonstrate that you understand appropriate boundaries, you will have no access to this child. The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Brandon caught up to me one last time. His parents were behind him, his mother's face red and tear-streaked. His father looked like he'd aged 10 years. I hope you're happy, Brandon said. You've destroyed my family. No, I said calmly. Your mother tried to destroy mine. I just refused to let her. She only wanted what was best for Violet. She wanted to control Violet. There's a difference. I adjusted my purse on my shoulder. But you'll get to see your daughter. You'll get to be her father, as long as you set boundaries with your mom. That's more than you were going to give me. I walked away, leaving them standing on the courthouse steps. Patricia had warned me not to gloat, not to say anything that could be used against me later. But I couldn't resist one last look back. Brandon's mother was sobbing against his father's shoulder. Brandon looked lost, like he'd been following her script for so long he'd forgotten how to think for himself. Part of me felt sorry for him, a small part. The part that remembered loving him before I realized he'd always choose his mother over me. Caroline took me and Violet out for ice cream to celebrate. Violet didn't understand what we were celebrating, but she was happy to get chocolate chip ice cream before dinner. She chattered about her day at preschool, blissfully unaware that her entire future had just been secured. What happens now? Caroline asked while Violet was distracted by her ice cream. Now we figure out normal, I said. Whatever that looks like. Finding normal took longer than I expected. I rented a small 2-bedroom apartment near Caroline's house. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. I slowly rebuilt my client list, working during Violet's preschool hours and after her bedtime. Brandon started his co-parenting classes and gradually earned unsupervised visits. The first time I had to let Violet go with him alone, I nearly had a panic attack. What if he took her to his mother's? What if they ran? Patricia reminded me that Brandon knew the consequences. One violation, and he'd lose all his custody progress. Besides, Dr. Chen's report had shaken him. He was trying, in his own weak way, to be better. Violet came back from that first unsupervised visit talking about the park and chicken nuggets and how Daddy said she could call him whenever she wanted. No mention of grandmother. Brandon was following the rules. Months passed. Seasons changed. Violet's 4th birthday came and went with 2 parties, one with me and one with Brandon. I sent polite emails about school events and doctor's appointments. Brandon responded professionally. We weren't friends, would never be friends, but we were successfully co-parenting. Then, 15 months after the final custody ruling, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. I need to speak with you. It was Brandon's mother's voice, hoarse like she'd been crying. You're not supposed to contact me. Please, just listen. 5 minutes. I should have hung up, should have called Patricia and reported the violation. But something in her voice stopped me. This wasn't the imperious woman from the birthday dinner. This was someone broken. 5 minutes, I said. I'm in therapy. Real therapy, not the kind where I complain about you. My therapist has helped me see how controlling I've been. Not just with you, with Brandon, with everyone. She paused. I was wrong. About everything. The journal, the planning, trying to take Violet. I was so focused on what I thought was right that I couldn't see I was destroying my own son's family. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did, and I'm trying to be better. Why are you telling me this? Because in 8 months, I can petition to see Violet again. And I wanted you to know that when that time comes, I'm not going to fight you. If you decide I should never see her, I'll accept that. Because you were right. I treated her like property, like something I could control. And that's not love. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to list every terrible thing she'd done. But another part recognized the exhaustion in her voice, the genuine remorse. Maybe it was manipulation. Maybe it was real growth. I honestly couldn't tell. I have to go, I said. Violet has preschool pickup. Thank you for listening. She hung up before I could respond. I told Patricia about the call. She made a note in my file but said it didn't technically violate the no contact order since it was brief, and I'd allowed it to continue. What are you going to do when she petitions for visitation? Patricia asked. I don't know. You have 8 months to decide, but think carefully. Violet will eventually ask about her grandmother. You'll need to have an answer. I thought about it a lot over the following months. What kind of relationship, if any, should Violet have with her grandmother? The woman had tried to destroy me, yes, but she was also Violet's family. Did that matter? Should it matter? Brandon never mentioned his mother's call, which meant she probably hadn't told him about it. That was interesting. The old Brandon's mother would have used the call to prove she was trying to reconcile. The fact that she kept it private suggested maybe the therapy was actually working, or maybe she was just better at manipulation now. 6 months after the call, Caroline invited me out for coffee while Violet was at Brandon's for the afternoon. We sat in a quiet cafe near her hospital, and she studied me with that concerned older sister expression I'd seen 1,000 times. You need to make a decision about Brandon's mother, she said. The petition date is coming up. I know. What's your gut telling you? My gut was telling me a lot of conflicting things. That people could change. that some damage was irreparable, that Violet deserved to know her grandmother, that I had every right to protect my daughter from someone who tried to take her from me. I think, I said slowly, that I'm going to allow supervised visits. Very supervised. Maybe once a month for an hour. And at the first sign of her trying to undermine me or manipulate Violet, it's over. That's generous. Maybe. Or maybe I just don't want to be the person who keeps a child from family out of revenge. I want to be better than that. Caroline smiled. You already are. When the petition came, I didn't fight it. Patricia negotiated strict terms. Supervised visits once a month. No gifts without my approval. No discussions about the past or about me. One violation and the visits would stop permanently. The first visit was at the same community center where Brandon's supervised visits had started. A different social worker, a woman named Ruth who had a kind but no-nonsense demeanor. Brandon's mother arrived exactly on time, dressed simply, none of the designer clothes and jewelry she usually wore. She looked older, tired. When Violet ran into the room, I saw Brandon's mother's face crumple with emotion, but she didn't rush forward. She waited for Violet to come to her. Let my daughter set the pace. Hi, Grandma, Violet said uncertainly. She remembered her grandmother, but hadn't seen her in almost 2 years. That's an eternity to a 5-year-old. Hi, sweetheart, Brandon's mother said softly. I've missed you. I sat in the corner with Ruth, watching, ready to intervene, but the visit was quiet. They colored, read a book. Brandon's mother asked Violet about kindergarten, her friends, her favorite thing, normal grandmother things. Nothing that set off alarm bells. At the end of the hour, Brandon's mother hugged Violet gently. Then she looked at me. Thank you, she said simply. I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak. In the car, Violet asked, why don't I see Grandma more often? Grandma and Mommy had some disagreements a while ago. We're working on being friends again. Oh, like when I had a fight with Sophia at school? Something like that. We're friends again now. She shared her crayons. If only adult relationships were that simple. The monthly visits continued. Brandon's mother was rigidly appropriate. Never overstepped. Never tried to undermine me. After 6 months, Ruth recommended the visits could move to unsupervised. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Then Violet's 6th birthday approached. I planned a party at a local entertainment venue. Invited her school friends, my family, Brandon. I didn't invite his mother, but I knew Violet would notice. 3 days before the party, I called Brandon's mother. She sounded surprised to hear from me directly. I'm calling about Violet's birthday party, I said. You can come, but your husband too, and you're not to be alone with Violet at any point. And if you make me regret this decision, it's the last party you'll ever attend. Silence. Then, thank you. I'll be on my best behavior. I know you will. Because otherwise, you'll lose her completely. The party was chaos in the way children's birthday parties always are. 26-year-olds hopped up on sugar and excitement, racing through obstacle courses and playing arcade games. Brandon's mother arrived with her husband, brought an age-appropriate gift I'd pre-approved, and spent most of the party sitting quietly at a table watching Violet play. At one point, Violet ran up to her. Grandma, come play! Brandon's mother glanced at me. I nodded. She followed Violet to the arcade area and helped her play a racing game. Brandon's father stayed at the table, looking uncomfortable. He hadn't been part of the conspiracy as far as I could tell, but he'd enabled his wife's behavior. That made him complicit. After the party, as people were leaving, Brandon's mother approached me. I know this doesn't fix anything, she said quietly. But I am trying. I really am. I know, I said. Because I did know. I'd watched her carefully over the past months, looking for signs of manipulation or control. Instead, I'd seen someone genuinely trying to change. It didn't erase the past, didn't make what she'd done okay, but it was something. Can I ask you something? Brandon's mother said. Why did you give me another chance? After everything I did? I thought about that question. I'd asked myself the same thing many times. Because Violet deserves to know her grandmother if her grandmother can be good for her. And because being consumed by anger was destroying me. Letting you back in, with boundaries, was healthier than holding on to that rage forever. You're a better person than I am. No, I said. I just learned from watching what happens when someone lets controlling behavior destroy relationships. I decided I wanted to be different. 2 years after the birthday dinner that changed everything, my life looked nothing like I'd imagined. I was a single mother, working full-time as a marketing consultant from my small apartment. Violet split time between my place and Brandon's. I had a cordial but distant relationship with my ex-husband and a carefully managed relationship with his mother. It wasn't the fairy tale I dreamed of when I got married, but it was stable, it was safe, and it was mine. Caroline remained my rock, babysitting when I had evening client calls, hosting holiday dinners, being the sister I'd always needed. Patricia had become a friend beyond being my lawyer, occasionally meeting me for coffee to check in. Even Dr. Chen had reached out once, just to see how Violet was adjusting. Everyone who'd helped me through the darkest time had become part of our support system. Violet was thriving. She was happy, well-adjusted, doing great in school. She loved both her parents, had a relationship with her grandmother that was slowly rebuilding, and seemed blissfully unaware of the war that had been fought over her future. That was exactly how it should be. One evening, I was making dinner when Violet asked me a question that stopped me cold. Mommy, why did you and Daddy stop living together? She'd asked before, but always in simpler terms. This time felt different, more searching. She was old enough now to understand more complex answers. I sat down at the table with her. Daddy and I loved each other once, but sometimes grown-ups realize they want different things. And it's better for everyone if they live separately, but still both love you very much. But what happened? There must have been a reason. I chose my words carefully. Daddy's family and mommy didn't agree on important things. And instead of working through those disagreements, we made choices that hurt each other. So we decided living apart was healthier. Did Grandma have something to do with it? Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Grandma and Mommy had some problems, yes, but we're working on them now. Violet seemed satisfied with that answer. She went back to her homework while I finished making pasta, but I couldn't stop thinking about that conversation. Eventually, she'd ask harder questions. She'd want to know details. What would I tell her then? The truth, I decided. Age-appropriate, but honest. She deserved to know that sometimes people who love you can hurt you. That forgiveness was complicated. That you could set boundaries and still have relationships. These were lessons I was still learning myself. That weekend, I took Violet to the park where Brandon would meet us for pickup. It had become our routine, a neutral location for exchanges. He arrived on time, smiled at Violet, nodded politely at me. We'd become experts at civil coexistence. Can we talk for a minute? Brandon asked. Before Violet and I head out, I sent Violet to the playground where I could still see her. What's up? Mom asked me to give you this. He handed me an envelope. She wanted to write you a letter but didn't want to violate any contact restrictions. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter on simple stationery. I know I can never undo the damage I caused. I know I almost destroyed your life and traumatized my own granddaughter in the process. I've spent 2 years in therapy trying to understand why I thought I had the right to control everyone around me. My therapist helped me see that I was terrified. Terrified of losing my son, of not being needed, of becoming irrelevant. So I tried to make myself indispensable by tearing down anyone who threatened that position. You threatened it simply by existing and loving Brandon. I was wrong. Not just wrong in my actions, but wrong in my fundamental thinking. Violet doesn't belong to me. She doesn't belong to anyone. She's her own person who deserves parents and grandparents who put her needs first. I'm writing this not to ask for anything, but to acknowledge what I did. You showed me mercy by allowing visits with Violet, and I will never take that for granted. You could have cut me out completely, and no one would have blamed you. Thank you for being stronger than I was. For being the mother Violet needed when I was trying to undermine you. For teaching me, through your actions, what real love looks like. I hope someday Violet knows how hard you fought for her, and I hope she never has to fight the way you did. I folded the letter carefully. My hands were shaking slightly. Brandon watched me, trying to read my reaction. Did you read this? I asked. She showed it to me before sealing it. What do you think about it? Brandon looked away, toward the playground where Violet was going down the slide. I think my mom is finally admitting things I've known for years but was too weak to confront. And I think you deserved this apology years ago. You could have stopped her, I said. Back when she first started planning. You could have set boundaries. I know, but you didn't. Because some part of you agreed with her that I wasn't good enough. Brandon met my eyes. Some part of me was terrified of being alone, of failing, of not living up to expectations. So I let Mom drive, even when I knew she was steering us toward disaster. He paused. I've been in therapy too, trying to figure out why I betrayed someone I loved because I was afraid of disappointing someone I feared. And have you figured it out? I'm getting there, slowly. We stood in silence for a moment, watching Violet play. She was laughing, racing another child to the swings, completely carefree, completely unaware of the complicated adult emotions swirling around her. I should go, Brandon said. Big trip to the zoo planned. Have fun. She's been excited about it all week. As I drove home alone, I thought about forgiveness, how complicated it was, how it didn't mean forgetting or condoning, how you could forgive someone and still maintain boundaries, how you could acknowledge someone's growth while remembering who they used to be. I thought about the birthday dinner that had exploded my life, how terrifying it had been, how close I'd come to losing everything, but also how it had forced me to find strength I didn't know I had, to fight for my daughter, to build a life on my own terms. Would I go back and change that moment if I could? Would I swallow the insult, smile politely, let Brandon's mother continue her slow campaign to undermine me? No, because that moment of defiance, as scary as the consequences were, had been necessary. It had been the moment I stopped accepting treatment I didn't deserve, the moment I chose self-respect over keeping the peace. Back at my apartment, I pinned Brandon's mother's letter to my bulletin board, not as decoration, but as a reminder of how far we'd all come, of the importance of boundaries, of the possibility of change, even when it seemed impossible. My phone buzzed. A text from Caroline. Dinner this week? Just us? I need sister time. I smiled and typed back, absolutely. I'll bring wine. 3 years after the birthday dinner, I was standing in my own kitchen in a house I'd bought with money from my thriving consulting business. Violet's artwork covered the refrigerator. Photos of her with me, with Brandon, even a few recent ones with her grandmother lined the walls. Our blended, complicated, imperfect family. Brandon had remarried, a quiet woman named Fiona who worked as a teacher and treated Violet kindly. I'd met her twice, both times at school events. She seemed nice. More importantly, she seemed to make Brandon happy in a way I never had. His mother approved, but quietly this time. No interference, no manipulation, just polite acceptance. I'd started dating someone myself, a software engineer named Mitchell who had 2 kids from his own divorce. We were taking things slow, both of us cautious about blending families. But he made me laugh, made me feel like myself, not like someone constantly being judged. Violet had adjusted better than anyone expected to our complicated family situation. She had 2 homes, multiple sets of adults who loved her, and seemingly unlimited birthday presents. To her, this was normal. She'd never known anything else. One Saturday morning, Violet and I were making pancakes when she asked, "Mommy, do you ever get sad that you and Daddy aren't married anymore?" I measured out flour carefully, thinking about my answer. Sometimes I get sad that things didn't work out the way I planned, but I'm not sad about where we ended up. Are you sad? No. I like having 2 houses. And Uncle Mitchell is nice. He's not your uncle, sweetie. He's Mommy's friend. But he might be more than a friend someday, right? Like how Daddy has Fiona? Maybe. Would that be okay with you? Violet shrugged, more interested in pouring chocolate chips into the pancake batter. I guess. As long as he keeps letting me beat him at video games. That evening, after Violet was asleep, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea and thought about the journey that had brought me here. The terror of discovering the conspiracy, the fear of losing Violet, the exhaustion of legal battles, the slow, painful process of rebuilding trust and establishing boundaries. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments I'd wanted to give up, to surrender, to believe what they were saying about me. But I'd kept fighting. For Violet, for myself, for the principle that you don't let people manipulate and control you, no matter how much they claim it's out of love. My phone rang. Patricia, calling just to check in as she did occasionally. "How's everything?" she asked. "Good. Really good, actually." "Violet okay?" "Thriving. Brandon's following the custody agreement perfectly. His mother hasn't stepped out of line once in the past year." "That's excellent. You know, I've represented a lot of clients over the years, but your case was special. Most people in your situation would have crumbled. You fought back. I had good help. You had good instincts. You trusted them. That's rare." After we hung up, I went inside and checked on Violet one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, her stuffed bunny clutched under one arm. This was why I'd fought. This peaceful, happy child who felt secure enough to sleep without nightmares, who didn't carry the weight of adult conflicts on her small shoulders. The next monthly supervised visit with Brandon's mother was scheduled for the following weekend. We'd been doing them for over a year now, and they'd become routine. But I still watched carefully, still monitored, still maintained boundaries. Some things, once broken, required constant vigilance to keep repaired. At the visit, Brandon's mother brought a photo album she'd made. Pictures of herself as a young mother with Brandon, her own parents, family history. "I thought Violet might like to know where she comes from," she explained to Ruth, the supervisor, before showing it to Violet. It was appropriate, thoughtful, the kind of thing a grandmother should do. I nodded my approval. As Violet flipped through the pages, asking questions about the people in the photos, Brandon's mother caught my eye. "Thank you," she mouthed. I nodded slightly. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was acknowledgement of her effort, of her change, of the fact that she was trying to be the grandmother Violet deserved. After the visit, Ruth pulled me aside. "I've been supervising these visits for 14 months now. I see no reason they need to continue being supervised. She's been nothing but appropriate." "I know. So? 1 more month," I said. "Then we can discuss unsupervised." Ruth nodded. She understood. Some wounds took longer to heal. That night, Violet asked if she could call Grandma. Not during a scheduled visit, just to say hi. It was a small request. A normal request. The kind of thing grandchildren did all the time. But for us, it was monumental. It meant Violet felt comfortable enough to want that connection. "Sure," I said. "Let's call her." Brandon's mother answered on the second ring. She sounded surprised and delighted to hear from Violet. They talked for 10 minutes about school, about a book Violet was reading, about nothing important and everything important. Normal grandmother-granddaughter conversation. When Violet handed the phone back to me, Brandon's mother said, "I know this was hard for you to allow. Thank you. She's your granddaughter. She should be able to call you. Not every mother would be that generous after what I did. I'm not being generous. I'm doing what's right for Violet. There's a difference." After we hung up, I realized that was true. This wasn't about being kind to Brandon's mother. It wasn't about forgiveness or moving on or any of those nice-sounding concepts. It was about Violet having access to family members who loved her and who had proven they could be appropriate. The boundaries would remain. The vigilance would continue. But within those boundaries, normal relationships could exist. That was the balance I'd been searching for. 4 years after the birthday dinner, Violet turned 8. She was confident, happy, doing well in school. She had friends from both neighborhoods where she lived. She talked easily about having 2 houses, 2 bedrooms, multiple adults in her life who cared about her. To her, this was simply her family. Complex, yes, but hers. The night before her birthday party, she asked me another hard question. "Mommy, why did you say that thing at Daddy's birthday dinner? The thing that made Grandma upset?" I'd been wondering when this would come up. She'd heard pieces of the story over the years, had probably formed her own understanding. Now she wanted the truth. "Grandma said something mean about me," I explained carefully. She'd been saying mean things for a long time, and I was tired of pretending it was okay. So I said something back. It wasn't the nicest thing I could have done, but I was standing up for myself. Did it start the big fight? Yes. Do you wish you hadn't said it? I thought about that question. Really thought about it. No, I said honestly. Because that moment made me realize I needed to protect both of us from some unhealthy situation. If I hadn't said it, things would have gotten worse in different ways. So sometimes it's okay to start fights. Sometimes it's necessary to speak up, even when it causes conflict. The trick is knowing when staying silent is protecting yourself versus when it's hurting yourself. Violet seemed to think about this. That's confusing. It really is. I'm still figuring it out myself. The birthday party was at our house this time. I'd invited everyone, my family, Brandon and Fiona, Mitchell and his kids, even Brandon's parents. It was the first time we'd all been in one space together since the divorce was finalized. I debated the wisdom of this, but Violet had specifically asked for everyone to be there. Brandon's mother arrived with her husband, bearing an appropriate gift and a tentative smile. She greeted me politely, didn't try to take over, didn't criticize my decorations or food choices. She was a guest in my home, and she acted like one. At one point during the party, I found myself standing near her while we watched Violet blow out candles. "Your home is lovely," she said quietly. "Thank you. And Violet is so happy. You've done well with her." Coming from her, that acknowledgement meant something. Not everything, but something. "We've all done well with her," I said. "It takes a village." "That's generous of you to say." "It's true. Brandon is a good father. You're trying to be a good grandmother. Mitchell has been wonderful with her. She's surrounded by people who love her. That's what matters." The party continued. Kids played, adults chatted, and for a few hours, we all pretended we were a normal, extended family. Maybe we were becoming one. A weird, complicated, previously broken, now healing version of a family, but family nonetheless. As people were leaving, Brandon's mother approached me one more time. "I know I say this often, but I truly am sorry for everything I put you through. If I could go back and change it, I would. I know, and I appreciate that you've worked so hard to change, but you can't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward. Are you happy? Truly?" The question surprised me. I thought about it. "Yes," I said. "I'm happy. My life isn't what I planned, but it's good. Maybe better than what I planned." She smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuine. "I'm glad. You deserve that." After everyone left and Violet was asleep, I cleaned up the remnants of the party. Birthday streamers, paper plates, crumbs everywhere. The chaos of celebration. As I worked, I thought about the woman I'd been 4 years ago. Scared, defensive, unsure of her worth. Married to a man who wouldn't defend her against his mother's criticisms. Trapped in a life that was slowly crushing her spirit. That woman wouldn't recognize who I'd become. Independent, strong, someone who set boundaries and kept them. Someone who fought for what mattered and didn't apologize for it. The journey to this person had been brutal, but I wouldn't trade it. My phone buzzed. A text from Mitchell. "Great party. Violet had a blast. So did my kids. Dinner this week?" I smiled and typed back. "Sounds perfect." 5 years after the birthday dinner, I married Mitchell in a small ceremony at Caroline's house. Violet was my flower girl, practically bouncing with excitement. Mitchell's kids stood with us. Brandon and Fiona came, which meant something. Even Brandon's parents attended, sitting quietly in the back, respectful of boundaries. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than a fairy tale. It was real, built on honesty and respect and clear communication. All the things my first marriage had lacked. Mitchell knew my history, knew what I'd been through, and loved me anyway. More than that, he respected my strength instead of being threatened by it. During the vows, I promised to be honest, to communicate, to never let resentment build in silence. Mitchell promised the same. We both knew what happened when people didn't speak up, when they let toxic patterns continue. We'd both lived through it. The reception was joyful. Dancing, laughter, toasts that made everyone cry. My dad gave a speech about watching his daughter find her strength. Caroline talked about the sister who'd survived something that should have broken her. Even Brandon raised a glass, saying simply, "To new beginnings and old lessons." Later that night, after the guests had left and Violet was asleep on Caroline's couch, Mitchell and I sat on the porch watching the stars. "Think we'll make it?" he asked. "We're both pretty damaged." "Damaged, but self-aware," I said. "That's got to count for something." "Your ex-mother-in-law said something interesting to me earlier," Mitchell said. "She told me to never let anyone come between us. That families should be respected but not allowed to destroy relationships." "She said that?" "She did. I think she meant it as a warning. Like, learn from her mistakes." I thought about that. Brandon's mother, giving relationship advice. Teaching someone else not to repeat her errors. Maybe people really could change. "What did you say?" I told her I would. And I meant it. We sat in comfortable silence, and I reflected on how far we'd all come. Brandon's mother from controlling manipulator to someone who understood boundaries. Brandon from weak enabler to engaged father. Me from scared victim to confident survivor. And Violet, growing up surrounded by imperfect adults who were all trying their best. The next morning, Violet burst into our hotel room. "Are you married now? Like really, really married?" "Really, really married," I confirmed. "Does this mean Mitchell's kids are my siblings now?" "Kind of. Step-sibling." "Cool. I've always wanted siblings." She climbed onto the bed between us. "Does Daddy know you got married? He was there, remember?" "Oh yeah, he looked happy." "Why was he happy if you married someone else?" "Because Daddy wants Mommy to be happy. Even though we're not married anymore, we still want good things for each other." This seemed to satisfy her. She snuggled between us, chattering about the wedding cake and how she'd caught the bouquet even though she wasn't supposed to. And wasn't that so funny? 8 years old and already understanding more about complex family dynamics than most adults. Over the next few years, our blended family found its rhythm. Violet split time between houses, now referring to Mitchell's place as home just as easily as mine. Mitchell's kids, teenage now, treated her like a little sister. We had joint dinners, coordinated schedules, and slowly built something that worked for all of us. Brandon's visitation remained consistent. He'd grown into his role as father, more confident now. Fiona had softened his edges in a good way. He was better at boundaries, better at communicating. We'd never be friends, but we were effective co-parents. That was enough. Brandon's mother's visits with Violet had become unsupervised after that first year. She picked Violet up once a month, took her to lunch or the museum or the park. She never overstepped, never contradicted my parenting, never tried to manipulate or control. It was like watching a completely different person, one who'd learned painful lessons about respect and boundaries. One afternoon, about 7 years after the birthday dinner, I ran into Brandon's mother at Violet's school play. We'd both arrived early to get good seats. She looked older now, her hair almost completely gray. She'd stopped dyeing it, stopped trying to maintain the perfect appearance she'd always cultivated. "May I sit with you?" she asked hesitantly. "Of course." We sat in awkward silence for a moment, then she said, "I never properly thanked you for giving me another chance with Violet. Most people wouldn't have. You earned it by changing. I almost destroyed my own family because I couldn't control my need to control." She laughed bitterly. "My therapist says I should be proud of recognizing that. Some days I am. Some days I just feel ashamed of who I was. Both can be true," I said. "You can acknowledge the growth while still feeling remorse for the damage. You're very wise for someone so young. I learned the hard way. Pain is an excellent teacher." The play started. Violet was phenomenal as a talking tree, delivering her 3 lines with perfect timing. We both clapped enthusiastically. For those 2 hours, we were just 2 people who loved the same child, watching her shine. After the play, as we waited for Violet to come out, Brandon's mother said, "I need to tell you something. I'm selling the house. The one where I kept the journal, where I planned all those terrible things. I can't live there anymore. Too many bad memories. Where will you go?" "Somewhere smaller. Just me and my husband." Brandon suggested we downsize years ago, but I refused. I thought the big house made me important. I was wrong about a lot of things. Violet emerged from backstage, still in her tree costume, and ran to both of us. "Did you see me? Was I good?" "You were amazing," I said, hugging her. "The best tree I've ever seen," Brandon's mother added, and Violet beamed. As we walked to our cars, Violet between us, I had a strange moment of clarity. This was healing. Not perfect, not without scars, but healing nonetheless. We'd all been wounded in different ways by the events that started at that birthday dinner, but we'd also all grown, changed, become better versions of ourselves. 8 years after the birthday dinner that changed everything, I sat in the audience at Violet's elementary school graduation. She was giving a speech as class valedictorian, talking about resilience in families and growing through challenges. She'd written it herself, and as I listened, I realized she understood more than I'd given her credit for. "My family doesn't look like other families," Violet said confidently from the podium. "I have 2 houses, 4 parents if you count step-parents, and a bunch of people who all love me in different ways. Some people might think that's weird or sad, but I think it's special, because every single adult in my life chose to put my happiness first, even when it was hard for them. That's real love." I was crying before she finished. So was Caroline beside me. Across the aisle, I could see Brandon wiping his eyes. Mitchell squeezed my hand. Even Brandon's mother, sitting a few rows back, had tears streaming down her face. After the ceremony, we all gathered for photos. The photographer looked confused about how to arrange us, who stood where, who belonged together. Finally, Violet took charge. "This is my family," she said simply, positioning us all together. Me and Mitchell, Brandon and Fiona, her grandmother and grandfather, Caroline, Mitchell's kids. We all fit. The photo was chaotic. Too many people trying to squeeze into the frame. But when I saw it later, I loved it. Because Violet was right. We did all fit, in our messy, imperfect way. That night, after Violet was asleep, Mitchell found me looking at the photo on my phone. "You okay?" he asked. I was just thinking about that birthday dinner 8 years ago. How terrifying everything that followed was. How I thought my life was over. But it wasn't. No, it was just beginning. The real version, not the fake one I'd been living. I set down my phone. I used to think I'd lost everything that night. My marriage, my home, my sense of security. But really, I'd started finding myself. Do you think you would have left eventually, even without that confrontation? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe I would have kept accepting the disrespect, kept making myself smaller, until there was nothing left of me. I leaned against him. The confrontation forced a crisis, and the crisis forced change. Painful, but necessary. Would you go back and change it if you could? No, because I wouldn't have Violet the way she is now. Happy, secure, resilient. I wouldn't have learned what I'm capable of. I wouldn't have found you. I paused. Everything terrible that happened led to something better. That doesn't make what they did okay, but it means the pain had purpose. Mitchell kissed my forehead. You're stronger than anyone I know. I'm strong because I had to be. Because giving up would have meant losing my daughter. That's not strength. That's survival instinct. It's both. 10 years after the birthday dinner, I attended Brandon's mother's funeral. She'd been diagnosed with cancer 2 years prior, fought hard, but ultimately lost. She was 71, At the service, Brandon gave a eulogy about a complicated woman who'd made serious mistakes, but had spent her final years trying to make amends. My mother was controlling, Brandon said honestly from the podium. She hurt people I loved, including my daughter's mother, but she also recognized her faults, did the work to change, and spent her last years being the grandmother Violet deserved. That kind of change, that kind of honesty about your own failings, that's rare and brave. At the reception after, I stood next to Brandon near his mother's photo display. Someone had included pictures from recent years. Brandon's mother with Violet at the zoo, at the museum, reading together. The grandmother she'd become after learning to let go. "Thank you for coming," Brandon said. "I know you didn't have to." She was Violet's grandmother, and despite everything, she tried to make things right. She talked about you sometimes in those last months, said you taught her more about strength and forgiveness than her therapist ever did, said you could have destroyed her completely, but chose mercy instead. It wasn't mercy. It was boundaries. There's a difference. Still, most people would have cut her off forever. You gave her a chance to know her granddaughter. That mattered to her. Violet appeared beside us, dressed in the black dress we'd picked out together. She was 13 now, poised and mature beyond her years. "Mom, can I say something at the service?" "Of course, sweetheart. What do you want to say?" "Just that Grandma wasn't perfect, but she loved me, and that I'll miss her." Simple. Honest. Exactly right. As we drove home from the funeral, Violet asked, "Mom, do you think Grandma was a good person?" I thought carefully about my answer. I think she was a person who did some very bad things, recognized they were bad, and worked hard to change. That made her better, but it didn't erase the harm she caused. Good and bad aren't always so simple. Did you forgive her? I made peace with what happened. I let her be part of your life because she earned that by changing. I don't know if that's the same as forgiveness, but it's what felt right. That makes sense. Violet stared out the window. I think I'll miss her, even though I know she wasn't always nice to you. You're allowed to miss her. You should miss her. She loved you. That night, I found the photo from Violet's elementary school graduation, the chaotic family picture with too many people trying to fit in the frame. Brandon's mother was there, on the edge, but there, smiling, at peace. The last photo we'd all taken together. I hung it on the wall in my office next to other important photos. A reminder of complicated journeys and imperfect people trying their best. A reminder that endings and beginnings were often messier than we wanted them to be. A reminder that you could survive the worst thing that ever happened to you and build something beautiful on the other side. 15 years after the birthday dinner, Violet graduated high school. Top of her class, full scholarship to college, bright future ahead. She'd grown into a confident, compassionate young woman who understood that families were complicated, but love could survive complexity. At her graduation party, she gave a speech thanking everyone who'd helped raise her. "I have a lot of parents," Violet joked. "Some biological, some step, some chosen. Each one taught me something different. Mom taught me to fight for what matters. Dad taught me that you can change and grow. Mitchell taught me that family is about choice as much as blood. And Grandma, who isn't here anymore, taught me that people can recognize their mistakes and become better." After the party, Violet found me cleaning up. "Mom, can I ask you something I've always wondered about?" "Anything." "That birthday dinner when I was little. The one that started everything. What exactly did you say to Grandma?" I'd known this question would come eventually. Violet was old enough now for the truth. "Your grandmother made a joke that Daddy could have done better than me. I told her he'd said the same thing about his parents. It was petty and mean and started a huge fight. Do you regret it?" "No, because that moment made me realize I couldn't keep accepting disrespect. It led to discovering some terrible things Grandma and Daddy were planning. If I'd stayed silent, things would have gotten much worse. So sometimes you have to start a fight to protect yourself. Sometimes speaking your truth feels like starting a fight when really you're just refusing to be silent anymore. There's a difference." Violet hugged me. "Thank you for not staying silent. For fighting. I know it was hard. You were worth every difficult moment." As I watched Violet pack for college a few months later, I thought about that scared woman at the birthday dinner 15 years ago. She'd had no idea what was coming. The discovery of the conspiracy, the legal battles, the custody fight, the long process of rebuilding. If someone had told her then how it would all unfold, she probably would have run away screaming. But she'd survived it. More than survived. She'd thrived. She'd built a life she could be proud of, raised a daughter who was confident and kind, created healthy relationships with boundaries, and learned that sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you is actually the catalyst for becoming who you were always meant to be. The birthday dinner wasn't the end of my life. It was the beginning of my real one.